this out for a long time. As I pointed out, that we have continued to invest heavily in this part of our country. Invest in the sense that we are putting in more resources, we are building new capacities in this area. Just recently, as a result of the recent conflicts, Mr. Chairman, the National Security Council decided that we would ask the KDF to help do water bans and to provide water and such resources to the communities in that area. And a number of activities have been done. We have the proposed Ayen Dam, the Chesitate water pan, and the proposed Chesitate 2 water pan that is being done and supported by the KDF. Because this way then we are able to provide livelihoods and support to the livestock herders who live in these particular areas. Again, if you looked at the problem we are dealing with historically, you will notice that counties like West Pokot, which also used to experience some of these challenges, have been able to almost fully get out of this phase or this type of conflict as a result of the investments and the collaboration that has been done between the county government of West Pokot and the national government in building more schools, building more facilities where the youth and members of the population who could engage in meaningful economic activity are involved in. We hope that as we go forward, what will help this place is not more soldiers or more police officers and more equipment. It is administering the place more responsibly. We have created and operationalized over 50 new administrative units in this belt, as it were, to provide administration and security resources closer to the population. We have put in additional resources in terms of security personnel. Mr. Chairman, may it please the committee to note that all the candidates who are registered to sit for KCP this year sat for KCP, and they all received their results in this area thanks to the work that the security teams have been doing in this particular area. We continue to face the challenge of laxity in surrendering firearms by the local populations, but we've worked on a new program of providing the National Police Service reservists whom we embed within the communities to be able to work with the communities and provide security, more security to the communities as it were. Finally, Mr. Chairman, we will continue to invest in development activities in this area. The solution, one of the solutions to this area is to ensure that we have more schools, more economic activities that people can engage in, that take their time away from the cat rustling and the destructive activities they engage in. The other solution, which is not now an issue for the national government but for the local leaders, is for the local leaders to engage in alternative mechanisms for dispute resolution. Over the years, Mr. Chairman, in many parts of our country where we have conflicts, whether it's over pasture or over land or over resources, we resolve this by community leaders coming together and resolving these issues. The leaders, political, religious, and otherwise, from this part of our country are urged, and we consistently keep pleading with them to develop community-based mechanisms of resolving their conflicts. We have had age-old pasture and resource sharing agreements between communities in Kenya, because that is how we have stemmed conflicts, for example, between Garissa and Isiolo sometimes in the past, between Kitui and Garissa in some parts of the border in the past, because of resource sharing programs and resource sharing agreements that are reached between local community leaders. We also urge the leaders of this part of our country to also develop those mechanisms of engaging and negotiating how resources can be shared without all the time causing these kinds of problems. However, because of increased activity of the bandits in Laikipia, the National Security Council was forced last week to insist that we intensify activity. That's why we closed the airspace in that area for 30 days, so that we are able to carry out aerial surveillance uninterrupted, and we are able to carry out aerial contact with the bandits without interference with any movement. And that will stay in place for 30 days. The report I have from our commanders is that we are making very good progress in that respect, and we believe that by the end of the 30 days, we will have sorted out the problem in that part of our country. But I would like to assure you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee, that we are very, very committed to ensuring that we have a peaceful transition, that the electoral cycle is not interrupted, that we have peaceful elections, no one is evicted from their place, and that those of our citizens who are engaged in livestock farming, who sometimes get into problems because of the drought and so on, we are trying to assist them by building these dams, building these ponds, and so on. We hope the county governments affected in these particular areas could also work with us to try and develop this infrastructure. Finally, the government is engaged right now intensely with the two development partners to do a key security infrastructure, that is the Nanyuki Rumuruti road, that will open up that place and provide additional infrastructure for our own security operations, and that will enable the inhabitants of that place live much more peacefully and transact very easily. Mr. Chairman, I respectfully submit.
Thank you, Honorable CS. It's very important for you to make that statement going by the apprehension that people have and what you have seen, the activities that have not been very pleasing in that area. But critically, it's important to note that you have confirmed that all students did their exams, albeit in difficult situation, but they did. That is something worth an effort, worth recognizing. But at the same time, we wonder if there are people who are bringing in illegal arms. Why are you not able to seal at the border point where previously it has been presented here that they are coming from the porous borders? Why are you not able to seal from that point so that we don't have them? So that then you are able to flush out to those using within, and then probably you can work at minimizing those ones that are in the hands of those bandits.
Mr. Chairman, the fact of the matter, which I think all of us need to live with, is that part of our problem is where we are located right now. I mean, look at our neighborhood. We have porous borders with Somalia. We have a porous border with South Sudan. DRC military activity has been going on in that part of our continent for a long time, and it's possible that there's movement of people. The truth of the matter is this: however hard we try to police these borders, it's like when we are fighting contraband goods across the country. We do our best using formal crossing points, and we monitor these formal crossing points. But these thugs also find panya routes through which they cross into the country with these small arms, as it were. The truth of the matter, Mr. Chairman, is that when you look at historically, if you take the data, and I can put up a graph and show you, over a period of time, because of collaboration with neighboring governments, because of the surveillance systems we have created, even that movement has actually declined significantly. But it has not declined to zero because of the insecurity going on across the border, as it were. So when the Toposa, for example, from South Sudan on the other side cross over, sometimes they cross over with the small arms, and some of these arms end up in the hands of wrong people, as it were. I promise you, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, we are doing the very best we can on this matter. I know we will succeed because I can see the trends and how we are moving on. It's been a tough exercise, and it's not going to end in a day or two or even in a month. But when you look at where we were 4 or 5 years ago and where we are today, honestly speaking, we have made tremendous progress. And now we have even greater collaboration, for example, with the government of Uganda on this matter. That's why I'm very optimistic myself, that if we're going to have a challenge, it's not going to remain singularly on the border between us and Southern Sudan, because our collaboration with the government of Uganda is making it much easier. Interactions between the Karamoja on the other side of the border and the Turkana on this side of the border, it's even much more peaceful. We are even negotiating, we have recently negotiated resource sharing programs where our livestock farmers can actually get water on the other side of the border if it's too dry on our side of the border, and that has worked very well. I agree with you, it can frustrate sometimes, but we can see a decline in this. But until there is sustainable peace in Somalia, sustainable peace in South Sudan, unless, and you can see what happened in Ethiopia the other day, all these things affect us. And then when people cross down into our country, then they find ways of moving around away from formal routes and formal infrastructure. They carry small arms with them. And we've tried to mop this. We will be even more helped if the communities themselves and the leaders spoke one language with us. In areas where we have succeeded, for example in West Pokot, it is because the local leadership and ourselves have been speaking the same language. In some of these areas of North Rift, for example, we have challenges. I have gone to meetings, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues who are here can bear me out. When I meet political leaders and they tell me that is the first time even they themselves are meeting, which means there is some work that needs to be done by others, but we will stay the course. We are not going to give up on this matter. We are committed to doing it. We can see we are making progress. It has been tough and it's a challenging situation, but I promise the committee we can see light at the end of the tunnel and we'll sort this out.
All right, thank you, CS. I know we had a team that visited Samburu from this committee and Laikipia, and then we are going to do a report on the same. But there was presentation made here before this committee by Honorable Kamuren, a member for one of the constituencies in Baringo. And he seemed to indicate that he has lost 2 of the 5 wards to bandits, that they're in the hands of bandits, and they have flushed out all the residents from there. And he seemed to offer some solutions, if only you could give an ear, that them as political leaders would want also to engage with you, so that, and I think you have spoken to that in this statement, that so that collectively you can get a solution to what is happening, especially in his constituency. So I think it's a matter you need to take up.
Mr. Chairman, I spent a whole day in Nakuru with the leaders of Baringo. I have listened to Honorable Kamren several times before. We have done everything they asked us to do. They asked us to operationalize the administrative areas. They asked us to, we have done. They asked us to increase the number of security personnel on the ground. We have done. They asked us to bring in additional resources from some of our special. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, it's a matter that is quite important. Not that yours is not, but proceed.
I was saying, Mr. Chairman, that I spent the whole day with the leaders of Baringo and Elgeo Marakwet in Nakuru, together with my colleagues, the Inspector General Police and the commanding team, GSU Commandant and everybody. We have listened to them. I think, frankly, they have useful suggestions to make. We have implemented all of them. They asked us to add administrative units and operationalize some of them. The process is going on. The areas where we have advertised to hire chiefs and so on. They asked us for additional security resources. We have provided. They asked us for NPR. Mr. Chairman, I can report to this committee that we have already actually appointed, trained, and created an NPR team in that part of the country, embedded it with the population, as it were. They asked us to intensify activity to move the bandits out of parts of Baringo. We have done. They asked us to put investment in doing some dams and enabling the Pokot warriors and Pokot herders to get water on the other side of Baringo. I have already read the 3 of them that we have done, and KDF is doing more because they are still on site to ensure that they do more of these water bans and so on. We are on course. As I said, this has been a tough experience, especially because, if I have to be very honest with you, Mr. Chairman, this is a matter that was not substantively addressed by our preceding regimes for a very long time. I mean, this is an area of the country where people didn't pay specific attention on how to solve the problems. We are moving in now to do, imagine if each regime since independence had done even 2 or 3 dams. But now we'll not be having the problems that we're having in that area. Now we are taking it up to ensure that it works out for us. And we are asking every leader involved to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, to reduce the level of incitement and mobilize community to participate in solution seeking. Because if we build a measure of cohesion and get our people together, build schools like has happened, what Honorable Cameron has done in his constituents, doing more schools and expanding learning opportunities. That is how we will get these young men who are moving around with the illegal firearms, attacking and raiding people's homes, to school and to more meaningful economic activity, as it were. So we are on course on this matter, and as always, we don't mind sitting down any day or night they want us to sit down with them. If they have additional suggestions to give us, Mr. Chairman, I undertake before you, we are absolutely ready to do whatever will be required to do by our leaders.
Very well, well done. I think those efforts are recognized in terms of what you're doing, and keep working for our people so that you can reduce the agony they are going through. The Honorable Oku Kaunya, who has been security rated sector before becoming a member of parliament, has an AOB which I want him to hold on to until we exhaustively deal with this issue of Samburu, Baringo and Isiolo. So I'll ask members who are interested in this, in terms of the insecurity situation in Baringo, Isiolo and Samburu. Those who are interested, you may pick up the chance. Honorable Mbugu.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, CS, for a very good response. My concern is just in your opening remark, you said about political incitement and pronouncement, which is meant by maybe us, the leaders. In this belt, what has the government done to bring these leaders to account? Because 50 years down the line, we cannot have leaders inciting each other or among communities because there is law. What have you been unable to deal with the leaders who incite their own to cause this conflict? Because that is what you said, CS. I would want to hear that. And also, lastly, there's a time there was a lot of fightings or in Mount. And there's a way that time the government dealt with that area so decisively, we have never heard of those kind of fighting again. Has the government done enough, or has the government been decisive enough in dealing with this insecurity in these areas? Because if you allow them to continue, they may eventually, even and that is being done, they may eventually also other areas which are currently peaceful may pick from here. So that what we do, as much as we say we don't need a lot of deterrent, it is to recruit and all that and all that. What really, we may use the word force, is the government doing to ensure that these things do not recur? Because I was surprised when you say over 50% of our security forces actually, they are deployed there, meaning resources and even personnel, meaning only 50% is being served by the rest of the country, which is a very alarming data anyway, if you ask me. Because these are less than quarter of the counties in Kenya, consuming 50% of our police force and resources. What can we do to ensure that at least we get what we are supposed to do to be as a country, Mr. CS? And I ask this out of respect. I know the government has done a lot, but I feel as if it is not good enough, or it is not the best we could have done as a country. Because like keep here, there before there were no issues of conflict. I think I'm hearing they have started just recently. It was not as bad as other areas, but now you can see where Laikipia is going. If we don't tame it, from Laikipia maybe we come to Nyeri, Kenya and all that. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable CS, that including the AOB, it should take us no more than 5 minutes. So if you can briefly respond, and if there's any need to engage further, we can always invite you.
Mr. Chairman, I need to correct something, because you know the media is here and statistics is very important. I said we are spending 25% of our general policing resources, not 50%, 25% of our general policing resources. Now, the question is, are there cases where have we been unable to deal with incitement? No, Mr. Chairman, honorable members, we have cases in court, ongoing cases in court where we have leaders that we have actually taken to court because of this. The matters going on in court, leaders that we have had arrested and they are going through the court process, and that a decision will be made not by us but by the court. Our colleagues at the NCIC have been working very hard on this matter and they are going on. So there are cases of incitement that we are prosecuting. We are not unable to deal with this, but we wish we didn't have to do this, or we wish they would be sorted out even at community levels without us having to arrest a member of parliament, because some of those cases actually involve members of parliament as it were. Secondly, have we done enough? Honorable members, Mr. Chairman, we've done enough. You know, in every conflict, we have to look at the character of the conflict. The character of the conflict we were dealing with in Mount Elgon was different from the character of the conflict we are dealing with in North Rift. We believe actually that the solution to the character of the conflict we have in North Rift is a development solution. That is what will deal with us. What we are dealing with is not hardcore, driven crime, because even at the National Security Council, I went to the council the other day to seek to list the various Pokot warrior teams as outlawed organizations like MRC and so on. But when we reviewed the matter at the council could not make that decision because these are citizens of our country. What they're engaged in is they have taken cat rustling and livestock raids too far, as it were, and it has been made easier because they can access small arms that are flowing through, some of our porous borders. It is not the hardcore criminality that we are dealing with, like we're dealing with Mount Elgon, of rape and plunder and so on and so forth. So even when we adopt those tactics, we have to look at the sustainable method. Secondly, this is in the middle of our country, almost, the population that we are dealing with is almost at the center of our country. Actions that we involve in as a government to try and bring an end to this banditry must also bear in mind that we have to build a sustainable environment of inclusion and integration, because these people have to live with their neighbors, as it were. That's why, as government, we have taken the decision that this is a development solution. And yes, we will apply the firm force of the law, but at the same time integrate it with deliberate development initiatives to try and intervene. Because we believe that if we stayed on this trajectory, the investments the government is making, for example, to avail water in that belt of the country, by the end of the next financial year, with the budgeted resources we have from the Ministry of Irrigation, we'll have covered some sufficient grounds that will reduce the amount of conflict that we are seeing at this moment. Secondly, with the livestock offtake program of Kenya Meat Commission, and now that Kenya Meat Commission has been revived and is doing spectacularly well, we are going to introduce the populations in this country to a new economically viable livelihood that will be more attractive to them, as it were. So working together. And thirdly, of course, if we invest in critical infrastructure, like I've talked about the road between Nanyuki and Rumuruti, this again will open up the area and discourage some of these criminal activities. We will win this war, not in a day or in a week, but I think within the next year or two, we should be fine, because we can see as I said, light at the end of the tunnel. When you look at this, on an historical plane, and look at the incidents we had in the past and what we have now, the situations we had, even in 2017, Mr. Chairman, if you remember, just before the election at a time like this, the situation we were dealing with was remarkably different from what we are dealing with right now, which means that the investments we are putting are borne fruit. We are likely to achieve more by greater engagement and greater economic investment, and then we will get there as it were. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have stretched the time so much, Honorable CS, Honorable Members, and Honorable Okukaunya MP had requested me, which I acceded as a chair, to address a matter of AOB, and that matter is in regard to what happened recently. And I'm hoping we shall engage that in about 3 minutes, because another committee is coming right in now for engagement in their business. And that matter is regarding the stoning of the helicopter of one of the senior Kenyans, which caused anxiety in some quarters. And therefore, I'll want us to be as specific as that. And I'll let Honorable Kaunya ask that A or B. You respond in the manner you can, up to the extent you can, and then we'll leave it there. Honorable Kaunya.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, it's a matter of national concern and public, really a public concern that 3 days ago, while the ODM leader and the former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga was attending the funeral of the late Jackson Kibor in Uasin Gishu, Soi Kebenes in particular, that rowdy group of people attacked the vehicles, including the chopper that was being used by the leader. That is a worrying incident that would like Chair to request that the CS could be able to update this committee on the status of investigation into that attack. And Chair, it's also a worrying incident considering the political time in which we are preparing for elections, because for sure is an issue that requires very firm and decisive action to deter even in the future such actions or incidences that can really bring us problems in this country. Because CS, I remember, Chairman, that the incidences we had in 2007, we all recall, started with this kind of small incidences. And if we don't deal firmly, CS, it will skyrocket and go out of hand. So CS, my question really is to update this committee on the status of investigation and really to assure us as leaders, and I think as the country, that these incidences should not occur again, so that we do not, at least measures that are necessary, but the measures have been taken also to ensure the security of the Honorable former Prime Minister and other leaders who are engaged in the campaigns is actually guaranteed. We really need that assurance, CS. Thank you, Chair.
Sensitive as it is, Honorable CS, you may now comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable members. What happened in Uasin Gishu last week is unfortunate, regrettable, and quite frankly, from a security point of view, annoying and unnecessary, because there was no need to do that. The police are hot on the heels of the perpetrators of those acts. Investigations started immediately. It happened. It is emerging from the evidence that we have collected, the evidence that was collected on that night, that was actually a premeditated act. It was planned because the suspects who were arrested with hoards of thousands of shillings broken down in 50 shilling notes, and they have taken statements. Clearly there must have been some choreography behind that, because it's not coincidental that these suspects had so much money broken in 50 shilling notes, and some of them, who are distributing this money around that particular time. The police have acted swiftly and decisively. We have 17 suspects whom we have taken to court. Investigations are going on, and we are still exploiting forensically some of the evidence we have, including phone numbers of the suspects and several other things that the DCI is doing that I would not like to discuss in an open meeting. We will go the direction investigations will point us. As I've said before, none of us, we all read the Constitution, none of us above the law. I am not, even if I'm Minister for Security or the Inspector General. We always have to act strictly according to the law, and fortunately we are a country that is governed by laws. However, I need to point out that these incidents are isolated. I don't think, first of all, and I want to say categorically, Mr. Chairman, with your kind indulgence and honorable members of the committee, that I don't think this incident speaks about even the county called was engaged. It's a small group of people who engaged in this, and they are criminals. They are being dealt with as criminals. Since this year started and the movement around the country, we have had about 4 incidents of this kind. There was an incident in Busia involving the deputy president. We have people we have arrested who are in court on the matter. There was an incident in Kondere in Kisumu, which we dispersed, a rowdy mob of people in a meeting that the deputy president addressed. And then there was the incident in Nairobi, again, which involved conflict between groups of youth who have been given money or paid or ferried to the meeting and so on. And then there is this incident in Uasin Gishu. I don't think this speaks to a trend or a pattern that is emerging in the country. So my first assurance to the committee is that we haven't picked any such information. And Mr. Chairman, as we have been planning for the elections and so on, we have infrastructure across the country and we are picking up information. I don't think this speaks to any pattern that is emerging. It's an isolated incident, as it were. Nonetheless, it's an incident we'll investigate, and go to the farthest extent that the law will take us. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, I will ask you and the honorable members of this committee that I think we are duty bound as the Minister of Interior to brief you on our preparations for elections and the security arrangements we have made. We have more resources than we had in 2017. We have more personnel than we had. Our police population ratios have significantly reduced. We are prepared, we are sufficiently resourced to support the conduct of the general elections. However, I must hasten to add that the conduct of elections is not our responsibility, it's the responsibility of the IBC. We will support the IBC to ensure that they conduct the elections. Where we'll be called upon to provide services, we will provide services. Finally, it's a point I need to say, which is, it may appear necessarily sensitive, but it's good that I be very sincere with you as a public servant. The greatest danger and challenge we face as a country during this electoral cycle, more than ever before, is the phenomenon of voter bribery and the renting of crowds and so on. There's a feature that is emerging in the country, and we have traced it across the country, where politicians are spending money to pay youths, move huge groups of people, ferry others at night and so on. Sometimes I don't know whether people accurately estimate the dangers that are involved in this. When you move people from one part of the country to another part of the country, they're traveling at night, some of them are traveling on matatus and so on and so forth, so that you can swell your numbers in a particular place. This phenomenon of renting crowds, trying to posture for popularity, or what you may call pretended populism, is what is actually going to hurt us, as it were. In 3 of those incidents I outlined earlier, it was a case where groups of people who had been given money clashed. Because you see, if you come to my area and I have an opponent there, I will mobilize, and my opponent is also mobilizing for you. And if we are mobilizing in opposite directions and we don't have the opportunity to give our various groups a similar brief, they will fight. And that's why I said earlier that police cannot be expected to mediate bribery contracts, because if I bribe people and you also bribe people, it's not upon the police now to figure out who was bribed how and who should behave how. That is the job of those who have bribed them and brought them. So the danger we face this year, and it's good that I say this very openly and sincerely to you as the committee in charge of security, what we have picked up that is going to be a danger in this year's campaign process and elections is voter bribery and the renting of groups of people, young groups of people and so on, who are being paid money, whether they are border ferried from one end to another end. That is going to become a problem. And if it doesn't stop as you move along towards the elections, because every group will be mobilizing and every group will be renting their own motorcycles and their own border people, the clashes will intensify. So it's upon us as leaders to decide how we are going to conduct ourselves, because all those things we are seeing, like what we saw in Uasin Gishu, it's indisputable. All those fellows who were arrested, they had money. Who would have? How can it be coincidental that you are carrying thousands of shillings broken in 50 shilling notes? You must have planned for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, okay. Thank you, CS, for that brief. If we need any further engagement on that, we shall let you know. But we are also very, very hopeful that you are not going to have sacred cows that are not going to face the full force of the law, because it's very important. It gets to a level sometimes that you find you let some people go loose with whatever crime they have committed. This time around, even us as politicians, we have the goodwill. We do not want our country to break down. So do your work. We shall give you the support, I will accord you the support that is necessary so that we achieve peace during and even after elections. And then finally, if there are people who are moving crowds and renting, you have the system, you have the equipment. Call them out for who they are so that we know in time. That is very, very important, so that you can create confidence in our nation, and also people know that they are safe even as we go to the elections. So we will leave it there because there's another committee coming in. I know members want to engage you, Honorable CS. Every time you come, you have a wealth of knowledge which they want you to share, and in fact, of course, information. But allow me, members, to say this, that we shall invite the CS, especially so, to give us in-depth details of preparation for elections and how you'll support IEBC, which you haven't told us, and which you are volunteering that you're able to share with us. So we shall create time for you to engage with us on that, together with, and now Honorable Sosi has come, together with this question number 074 on Safaricom. As much as you say it may hurt some of the entities, there is a level of information that you can share with us. And because we are obligated by the House to give response, and we must, you can as well share with us any confidential report regarding the same, to the depth that you think doesn't hurt any one of those entities. And in our next engagement then, we shall engage in camera over the same, so that you can give us any other smaller details that we may require after we receive that report. And I think that we do now, for now, Honorable Sosi, because you went out, not that you disappeared, but also that there's another committee that's coming in, and I have spoken to what needs to be done about your question in terms of a confidential report, and then we'll, next engagement with the CS, we will engage in camera. Thank you. Yes, and there are people waiting to get in, Honorable
Chair, sorry, I had stepped out because we had a House Business Committee meeting and they needed a quorum. I have heard the CS, and I think I'm okay with the request, save for the fact that he mentioned that the investigations are ongoing. But from the information I have, yes, the investigations are ongoing, but the individuals from Safaricom were summoned to appear before DCI, and they haven't appeared. And I wonder how the investigations are still ongoing when they have not appeared. So I just wanted the committee to note that.
We have noted, well noted, it may be or not in that confidential report, but definitely it will come out when we do in-camera engagement with the CS, and I want to believe you also be there. So with that, members, I want to thank you very much, CS, for availing yourself to tackle matters before us. If in case you have any statement that may have been asked by members and you have it, you haven't read, it's good enough to table it. I'll read them in the chamber later on, today or tomorrow, and then going forward. In terms of the next engagement, we shall let you know by notice through a letter, including details of what we require you to prepare on before you come before the committee. Members, thank you very much.